Hi, this is Tony Malik, Senior Product Manager for Windows Azure. In this walkthrough, I'll demonstrate how to set up the Windows Azure cache to cache ASP.NET session state. Caching the session state enables your users' in-session activities to persist and scale across multiple web roles. The Windows Azure cache provides a simple way to hold your data in memory and close to your cloud-based application. In a traditional deployment, developers need to understand where cache data should reside, configure the environment, provision the cache, and then manage the data. With the Windows Azure cache, the complex mechanics of building, configuring, and managing the cache are pretty much all done for you, leaving you to focus on determining which data is suitable for caching and making this happen through the Simple Cache API or via configuration. So let's now do a demo. For this example, I'm going to show you an application that stores user activities in the ASP.NET session. I'll demonstrate what happens if the web role to which the user is connecting is lost, resulting in a loss of session activity and data. Then I'll show you how easy it is to enable the Windows Azure cache to store session activity, so that the loss of the web role has no impact on the user session. You can download code files and instructions from Codeplex and follow along if you like. Okay, let's start. I'll open and run the application for you in the baseline state. The project consists of a Windows Azure project with a web role. The default page has a simple text box and a submit button. When we enter text and click the button, the text is sent to the session. I'm typing a little text to test both my typing skills and all the keys on my keyboard. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. As I add text, it's added to the session. With each page load, the text is read from the session and displayed below the text box. Now, I'll click between the Add Session Data page and the Show Session Data page to show the text I typed is coming from the session. Within the cloud, a user will connect to one web role at the start of an activity. However, with each click of the Submit button or link, they may connect to a different web role. Web roles can change for other reasons as well. The host machine could get recycled, or my application could crash. In these instances, my user will also connect to a different web role. As session state is bound to the web role to which the user is connected, connecting to another web role will result in the loss of activity data stored in their session, unless you persist this data across all web roles. I'm going to simulate connecting to a new web role by suspending the instance in the compute emulator and recycling my local IIS. When I refresh the web page, all our work is lost. The Windows Azure cache can solve this challenge for you by storing the ASP.NET session data. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm assuming you have already set up and provisioned your Windows Azure cache. Alright, now to the code. I'll do a brief walkthrough at the beginning state, and then we'll modify the configuration to enable the cache. When text is entered and the button on the home page is clicked, the text passes from the text box through a serializable class called Session Data and then into the cache. As the user adds more text, it is added and persisted in the session. Now let's look at how we're displaying the list. In the code behind of the Show Session Data page, I get the text stored in the cache and bind it to a list view control. Switching to the display page, you see the list view knows to loop through all the items in the list and show them to the user. Now let's wire up the cache to work with the application. First, we need to add the assembly to use a distributed cache in our project, the microsoft.web.distributed.cache.dll. You'll find them under Program Files in the Windows Azure SDK folder. In the Windows Azure portal, I click the View Client Configuration button in the ribbon, which exposes the service-specific configuration information we will put in our web.config. For this demo, we need to copy and paste the config sections and data cache client sections to the configuration section of web.config. This section contains the name of our cache and the access token to use it. Then I copy the session state section from the portal into the system.web section of web.config. This tells the distributed cache to store session state from the web role. And with that, the application is configured to use the distributed cache. But here's the best part. There are no code changes to make. Once the application is configured to use the cache for session state, the Windows Azure cache does the rest of the work in storing the data in the distributed cache. Let's run this. As before, I type into the text box and the text is stored in the session. As I switch between the add page and the display page, you see my data is intact and all is well. However, this time through, the session activity is also being persisted in the Windows Azure App Fabric cache, meaning my activities will survive the loss of the web role to which I'm connected. So let's test this. Like before, I'm stopping the emulator and resetting IAS, which simulates connecting to a different web role. Now I'll restart the emulator and refresh the web client. And there we are. My session state returns right where I left off, read from the distributed cache. In this presentation, we did the following things. We walked through a simple application using the ASP.NET session state. We demonstrated what happens to a session when connecting to a different web role. We configured the application to use the distributed cache to store session state from the App Fabric portal. We enjoyed the benefit of a distributed cache to improve user experience. I hope you see how easy this is and the benefits it can provide to your application. I recommend you test this out yourself. The demo code, scripts, and snippets are all available on Codeplex. Please also go to windowsazure.com where you can find the latest information and additional resources to help you try out this for yourself. Additionally, you can find details of our current offers, including a free trial, and download the SDK. Many thanks for your time.